Michelle, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining this presentation today, and thank you for the organizers for giving us the opportunity to present. I'll be talking about enterprise architecture and innovation management, and how one can help the other, and how we as enterprise architecture practitioners can get involved in the innovation management process. To do that, I'm going to use a couple of slides to talk about the topic, and then I'll actually close with a short demonstration showing how we do that using Software AG's enterprise architecture tool, Alphabet. Start off with the topic of innovation. I went on mute for some reason, but I'm back. And what I wanted to do is start off with some inspiration, some of the positive things that might help us to get involved in innovation. And some quotes. So to do that, I'll just pull in the quotes. The first one here is actually from Charles Kettering. Charles Kettering is apparently a holder of 186 patents. He was head of research for General Motors for a long time. And one of the things he said is that if you've always done something in a certain way, it's probably wrong. And I think this is quite a provoking statement, because it really tells us to question the things that we do and how we do it as a source of innovation. Because many things we do out of tradition, not necessarily because it's the most optimized way. Another quote here from Edison. He's talking about the value of an idea and how it lies in the using of it. And his really encouraging is to be practical, not just to do the philosophical part of innovation, come up with the good ideas, but also have to get our hands dirty and try them out. And that's the only benefit, really, of the idea at the end of the day. A third one here is from Tom Feston. Tom Feston actually is one of the founding members of the team that created MTV. And he said innovation is taking two things that exist and putting them together in a new way, which with music and video and channels, he did to create MTV. But I find this good because it really means part of innovation is just taking a look around us and trying to think about how we could do things in a different way, and that the solutions behind innovation might not be that far from us. They might be in front of us. We just need to try out some combinatoric work. And the last one is here from Alfred Nobel, and he said, if I have 1,000 ideas and only one turns out to be good, then I'm satisfied. And this is really saying, don't be disheartened with failure. If you don't try things, then you'll never reach anything. And part of trying things is that some of them work and some of them don't. And so this should really encourage us to keep innovating. So with that, I'd like to have to take in some inspiration. That was the carrot, and this is more like the stick. Say why we need to innovate, and really it's more important than ever before. This is just a graph showing the average lifespan of a company on the S&P 500. There are many reasons that lifespan is getting shorter. Also, investment life cycles are getting shorter. But one of the reasons is that companies are just not surviving as long as they used to. And this has to do with various things. We see things in the market that are changing. This first mover advantage and brand building. One have been increasingly associated with digital products and services, so we need to be innovative in this area. But also, the innovations behind that are coming out in shorter and shorter cycles, in shorter lead times. So we have to be extremely aware of what's going on around us to be able to keep up with the innovation that's going on around us, and to be able to keep ahead in the market. And in the markets that we're in, it might be that winner takes all is not a topic. It is obviously in some digital markets, but it's also coming common outside. Breaking into something like the automotive market is extremely difficult. We've seen that with innovation. Tesla has certainly dented that market and certainly caused a radical change to that market, but it's unusual. So it's really good to be ahead on the innovation curve. It gives you a big advantage. And obviously there are many companies and organizations that we know where, due to either not realizing an innovation or a change in the market, or not reacting to it, these companies are no longer existing or no longer as big as they were. So this really wants to underline why we need to innovate. Now, when I think about innovation and when we talk about it in our team, we tend to look at it from two directions. One is technology innovation, and this is really saying, okay, in terms of our innovation process, what's going on outside our organization which is going to change and impact us, and how do we need to react to that? And then we talk about business innovation, and this is really the opposite side, saying, okay, what are we as an organization trying to do to be innovative in the market? And it's two different questions behind it. The technology innovation is a bit like, what's this for? I've just invented the wheel, and what can I do with it? And the other one is saying, okay, I've got this great idea for an electric car, but how do I realize it? So it's two different approaches to innovation, and both of them are valid in probably every organization. So what can we do as EA practitioners to nurture innovation? What sort of things stand out? And I want to go through 4 of these. One is to actually, and this is especially in the area of technology innovations, to just gather and roadmap those innovations. Have some idea and some structure behind what's going on in the world, and when we expect it to happen. The second is to then look at those and look at our own business innovations and understand their impact and potential. A third one is, if we want to, once we've understood the potential, then act on it, then start road mapping the implementation of that innovation. And this becomes very core EA work when we talk about transformation planning, this sort of thing. And the fourth one is to involve people, encourage collaboration around innovation. Innovation is something that's not best done alone in the corner. It's sort of something that if it's a group activity, if it's a community activity, a lot more ideas come up and there's more inspiration. So look at these in a bit more detail. So if we talk about gathering and road mapping innovations, one thing has to be said is that this needs time. It's not something that's a free lunch. If we do not dedicate people in our organization, or part of the time of people in our organization to do this, whether it's within the EA organization or within the product houses or wherever innovation is being looked at, then it won't happen. Why do we want to gather them? One, to give structure to our innovation process, to help define a process which gives us insights, decision making, etc., to make sure that our organization, in a way, is showing due diligence in how it works with innovation. The other is it avoids duplication. If we find out that the same sort of things are being looked at in various parts of our large organization, then we can hopefully consolidate that, and those two processes can feed into each other, so it happens more quickly. It provides transparency in terms of what's going on in the market, and road mapping the innovations that we gather. That is not implementation. This is just saying, okay, when do we expect something like artificial intelligence to be big, to impact our organization? When do we expect to be able to use it? This helps provide a time frame for our effort, but also supports decision making and communication. If we have a transparent roadmap for some of the main things that we're looking at, then it helps explain why we're not doing this year, but we're focusing on this topic. The next topic here was, after the gathering and road mapping, was the assessing of impact and potential. And many of these things are the same, whether we're looking at technology or business innovation, slight differences. But obviously, when we do this, we want to consider two things. One is, what is the business impact of the innovation that we see? And this could be an innovative new product that we're doing, a business innovation, where we want to know, okay, how much revenue are we going to get? Is it going to involve a strategy change or a marketing change? What capabilities, processes, or organizations do we need to deliver it? Or it could be a technology innovation where we want to understand is this new innovation going to affect the way we create products? Yeah, we want to understand this sort of business impact, but we also want to understand whether it's going to change our technologies. Do we need to implement new technologies? Or do we need a new platform strategy, service strategy, et cetera, et cetera? And we want to look at these two things from different perspectives, maybe from more than two perspectives. I'm sure something like finance would be a perspective. And the sort of questions we might be asking are things like, is this opportunity strategic or operational? Are we looking at new business models or an innovation that's going to make our operating model work for half the price? That would be a big innovation. Associated with that, we'd want to understand the KPIs. What outcomes are we expecting? An increase in customer engagement, for example. And we'd want to measure that. We want to look at timeframes. When will this be realized? When will the innovation be available? When can our organization, our specific organization, digest this innovation and make use of it? Yeah, that's an internal roadmap. We look at feasibility. Do we have the skills? If not, when can we acquire them? How do we want to address skills? How do we want to look at innovation realization with an incubation approach? But we also understand things like, are standards being developed? If not, are there risks involved that they might be and that we might go down the wrong track? Is there an architectural impact that is major? And obviously, cost is always a factor, and we'd be looking at things like acquisition costs, know-how transfer, implementation programs, release train financing, etc. The sort of assessments we do, obviously, we want to communicate, and we'd use not necessarily portfolio diagrams, but portfolio diagrams are quite good for communication, radar diagrams, whatever we might use, but we need the sort of imagery to make the things that we've found out with our assessments easily digestible to the people that are making decisions. It's typical that we have this type of visualization. When we look at the actual implementation, we've done our gathering, we've done an assessment, we've decided to go for a specific innovation, then we'll be looking at the classic sort of transformation program, obviously linked with some major maybe milestones inside or outside the organization concerning in cases maybe of technology innovations. And typically we'd do this. This is a Gantt chart. And we see here release trains, program increments, and we see certain milestones, dependencies. That's part of our typical rollout map. But we'd also maybe see things like this, and this is where we're looking at, okay, we have an understanding of our operating model, which organizations are in processes and IT is involved, and do we have a migration plan? And this is the sort of thing that we're looking at, which might help us communicate better with certain stakeholders when they'll be moving from doing things one way to another way. And important also is also the KPIs for business. Okay, based on this sort of approach that we're taking with our innovation, we expect in this case our customer engagement to be better, and we've got a roadmap for when we expect that engagement. This obviously puts our neck in the noose because we'll be measured by it, but it's also part of the road mapping of the innovation. We don't just want to understand the implementation, we want to understand the benefit and have milestones about when certain things such as products or services are going to be available. And last but not least, we talked about involving people in listening, and there are a few things we can do there. One is sharing the knowledge. So if we do gather and collect the innovations, we can obviously make that available in portals, share that knowledge so that people also have that in the organization. We'd also make transparent where we are and what we're looking at. Encourage collaboration. We could obviously create teams, MS Teams, groups, etc., to talk about certain things, and then use that as a feedback and communication loop on certain topics. And we could maybe encourage people to self-register for these things. It's good to be open. I can imagine if you have an ideation process and every idea that comes in is actually then rejected, that after a while no more ideas come in. And even if we reject an idea, we're obviously not going to accept every idea that comes in. We'll probably reject most of them. But it's good to be communicative in that, to say, okay, we've looked at it, this is the results of what we've seen, maybe it doesn't fit into our core business model currently, etc., etc. A bit of an explanation behind it. Sponsor experiments, obviously that requires budget, but it's very important to try things out. Without it, there's no innovation. And as we saw in one of the quotes at the beginning, some of those will fail and we have to tolerate it. The result of not tolerating failure is that nobody tries to innovate. And that is obviously causes us to stand where we are and go nowhere. So those are some of the thoughts I just wanted to place before going on to the demo part of the presentation. With that, I'm going to leave the presentation and go over to the browser. My session was just about to time out. Here I am actually logged on to Alphabet. Looks quite busy. This is actually the interface, we would call it a profile for a program manager of an application portfolio program. That's not the topic today. I just wanted to use it to point out that we have this idea of different access for different types of users. And here is an APM program manager. He's got information here over the most expensive applications, how many are being phased in and out. And he has certain objects that he looks at all the time here on the left-hand side, such as capabilities, applications, IT, and locations, this sort of thing. But we're actually talking about innovation, so I'm going to change profile. Typically, you'd only have one profile, but you can change between different profiles. And we're going to look at the one for the innovation manager to look at the sort of things that we might want to consider as part of the work and how that is supported with software. So here we are logged on as an innovation manager. We see here that the sort of things that he's looking at on the left-hand side are different. He has things like innovations, ideas, trends, patents, strategy, and then some operating models, capabilities, such as operating model artifacts, such as capabilities, processes, and organizations. This is configurable. The sort of roles that we have in the organization tend to be not necessarily the same in every organization, but also some people have fuzzy roles and not necessarily core roles. And so these sort of things need to be configurable. You can obviously here create new things as part of it, see recent objects that have been visited, and there are certain widgets up here that express the status of certain projects. What we also see here is an innovation roadmap. So here we see actually, this is actually a business innovation, I can tell by the icon. But this is business innovation, and we see things such as milestones. When do we expect this innovation to be available? And when do we expect as an organization to realize the benefits from it? So we can do some road mapping to manage the expectations within the organization. What I'd like to do is look at this topic of ideas first. Ideation is part of the innovation process. And here we just have an overview, it's a list, it's a tabular view of the ideas that this innovation manager has received to look at. Some of them have already been reviewed, so he has a little box here of reviewed ideas. Some of them are still open. And there are filters and the typical things you'd have to be able to look at this in different perspectives. You could sort it, for example, by impacts or by name, etc. I want to take a closer look at one of them. So I'd look at this one here, establish a new customer advisory service. And this is an idea that was submitted by somebody else. And we see certain things that were entered by the person that submitted. It was actually submitted here by this guy called Picard, who's in sales. And it's actually got a status here. It's gone through to approved. And a description. The description here is something that the submitter put in. It might be enhanced, obviously, by the person that's reviewing or looking at it later. And we see here some business benefits that they described. And during submission, they have the option to associate it with various objects. That is something that is in context. So as a salesman, he's actually offered as objects in the way this is configured, things like products, the processes, the sales processes, and a couple of the applications he uses. He does not have to associate it. It obviously just makes it easier to direct it to a certain person to look at if it's associated. And that's configurable. I could like this idea. If I do, then the number of likes will go up. So this is sort of basic information. We also have the possibility here to look at a collaboration. This is a discussion thread that was started for this idea, and there are different people that have contributed to it. And these sort of discussion threads are obviously useful in involving people, in getting the sort of community know-how approach. There are two things I'd like to look at before leaving this dashboard, as we'd call it. One is this idea is quite advanced in the analysis, and it's been broken down actually into into what we would call demands or epics. So it's been broken down into pieces that are then actionable. The idea as it was submitted was not actionable, but we've broken it down into actionable ideas, and we've actually given those then roadmaps. And we've associated actually this P here as a project with one of these demands. So we've actually gone a step further and started to create a project. So this is the way that we can go from the idea to the actual implementation. We have to have some sort of transition from one to the other. This is just a pie chart showing the status. And below, we see the impacted architecture. So we see that this is going to impact certain applications, capabilities, processes, and these are actually products, technology products. And this helps us in obviously to understand the impact of the idea and to plan our development and how we might want to change it. But it also helps us consolidate. We might actually see that there are other ideas or other demands out there that are impacting similar objects, and we can then do a consolidation analysis. With that, I'd go back to the homepage and just take a quick look at here my ideas. So this is something that each user could have. And this is basically a view of the ideas that you submitted yourself. The view is sort of similar, it's tabular, but it can be changed if you want to make it more colorful. One of the things that you can do here is also look at the workflow. There's workflow behind this process, and we can look at this and understand, okay, currently the idea I submitted is the owner of the product that I associated it with. So we can follow the step-by-step how my idea is being processed if we allow the users to see this, which we would. We think transparency is best. So with that, I'd like to then switch over to actually the innovation side of the discussion. For that, we're going to look at the innovations here. And here, you'll see that we have here business innovations. It's actually split into operating model innovations and product and service innovations. This is a grouping structure that you can freely describe yourself. It's a taxonomy in that sense. And same here with technology innovations. And we're going to take a closer look at these. The technology innovations, we've decided to split it by what it could impact. So we're saying, okay, this could be something that improves our customer experience, or fintech. This is actually a bank. Our IoT technology attempts, or our mobile technologies, this sort of idea. If we open this up further, we see that the actual innovations are in this group. So we see a set of innovations have been defined that are going to impact our customer experience. And one of them, artificial intelligence, we could open up again. And what we have here is the possibility to say, okay, this innovation of artificial intelligence, it's not like one single innovation. It's actually a grouping of technologies that are coming together to give us this. So we can describe that innovation. And this gives us the option, if we just click on one of these, to actually then link into our normal technology, our classic technology architecture. So here we see, okay, this event stream processing, it's already being supported or tried out in our organization by certain products. And if I want to find out more about that, I could drill into this and I'd come to the information on the technology architecture, any standards that we've defined, etc. Any usage of that, I could say, okay, which applications use this technology? It just gives us a link from the innovation into the classic architecture from the technology perspective. If we take a look at the artificial intelligence as an innovation itself, we can see more information on what's been gathered, what's in our inventory of innovations. We see things such as here, the probable availability date, benefit realization date. It's been assigned to an owning organization. And here we see that although it's here assigned to customer experience, it's also seen to be impacting IoT technologies and fintech. So we see this being used in different ways in the organization. We also see there have been certain assessments already that have been done. We consider it transformational. There's a probability, and we've assessed risks, benefits, alignment, and effort. This supports us in our portfolio decisions. We can relate it to any ideas that have been submitted. So here we see the idea that we looked at, the new customer advisory service, something that is also looking at changing the customer experience. We've related them, and any trends that we're gathering. And here again, we see a roadmap. Another aspect that we can consider here is also this business survey. And what has been done here is a link to the other side to say what's the business impact. And this has been done in this case by looking at the capabilities that are impacted. So here we see a capability map for the organization, and we've highlighted certain capabilities that we really think are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. What we've also done is then initiate a survey, and this survey has gone to the people that are responsible for these capabilities. So if we look at this status of the survey, we'll see that there are 3 participants. They have different roles. One is the owner of the capability. 2 of them have been given a role of innovation contributor for the capability, and they've done a survey. They filled it out, and the results are actually here in this scorecard. And this is just another way of having engagement with the different stakeholders to try and get feedback, to try and get them in the innovation process. If we go a level higher again, we're at what we'd call the group level. We see here again a roadmap. What I wanted just to point out is the portfolio assessments. There are various here that have been defined. If we look at one of them just quickly, we see here one, okay, what is the risk of the innovation proposes in terms of our ability to use it, and what is the benefit? Obviously, the things here at the bottom with the low risk and high benefit are the things that are going to interest us. But we also see we have further indicators such as the color, which is the impact, whether it's going to be transformational or not. And here it's very transformational, and the size, which is the effort. So obviously something like this, which is in the right quadrant, and little effort and big impact is the sort of thing we'd focus on. It would be considered more of a quick win. But this sort of thing, again, just supports that decision-making process. And if we go to the very top level, again, to the technology innovations, we see the roadmap that we saw in the presentation. And this is just another way of communicating the status of our innovation management program, but also helps us to see certain things. Now, this roadmap we call it a circular roadmap. There's probably a better name for it. But really it's showing here with the different shells how far in the future we expect the innovation to occur and to become relevant to us in this case. So the further out, the less likely we have urgency to look at it now. We also see how many areas it's going to impact in our organization. That is the different segments. So obviously the ones that are in this 3 are the ones that probably have a bigger impact on us. So we might want to focus on those. What we also see is a color. This is red is transformational, and a shape. And the shape here is actually, there are 3 shapes that are used in this view. One is saying, okay, we've gathered the innovation. We've documented it. The second says that we've broken it down into executable demands, and we saw that we can do that. And these executable demands are associated as something that we understand, so we have an idea of what we can do. And the last shape, the diamond, says we've associated with a project. That means there's something already happening. Now, what this helps us do is identify things that are urgently wrong. In this case, urgently wrong might be this blockchain. It's very transformational, but nothing's been done with it yet. We don't have any idea of what we need to do with it. We don't have any projects, but it's not far out. The same with this chatbot advisors. So again, it gives us the ability to say, okay, this is where we are, and this is why we have to act urgently on this topic, and to support those sort of management discussions. So with that, I'd just bring in the presentation again and close the demo. And anyway, just like to go back to the first slide to summarize again the sort of things that we were looking at. Sorry, I'm just flashing a bit here, but this one, where we talked about gathering and road mapping innovations, assessing their impact and potential. The roadmap topic of once we've got the innovation, made a decision, and the fact that we need to involve people and listen. These are, I think, really 4 core things that we as EA can contribute to innovation management. And I think it's a very important topic. which if we can get involved in it, I think helps us also with our profile in the organization, but also is something we, as EA specialists, with the knowledge that we have and the sort of tools that we have, can really contribute to and ensure that organization is better at innovating. So with that, I think I'd just like to close the presentation part and open up the Q&A. Michelle, I don't know if you have any questions for me?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. The first one, you show the innovation radar at the end. Can I change this report to use different KPIs or attributes?
Yeah, the circle with the different triangles and dots and colors on it. This is a report that we have. We call it a circular roadmap report. And it's one of the configurable reports that we have. We have many different types of reports that are configurable, such as the Gantt chart that we saw or the portfolio diagram we saw. And we have report assistants that help us create those reports. And so you can change the KPIs on there. You can change also what's represented for each one, obviously. So you could, instead of shape, you can have a color for a certain KPI, or color or shape. You could change that. But you can also create these sort of circular roadmaps, as we call them, for different types of objects. So it doesn't have to be for an innovation. It could also be for your application landscape, if you have a roadmap for that, or for your strategic themes, if you wanted to have that sort of roadmap chart showing the different strategic themes and which areas of the organization they impact. So yes, that is something that you can do, and it's a very useful tool.
Great. We have another one here specifically to slide 10, and the question is, what software products were used to produce the innovation roadmap on slide 10?
The innovation roadmap was Alphabet. That's an Alphabet Gantt chart. I assume I'll just go to slide 10 to make sure we're talking about the right thing. So all these are actually screenshots from Alphabet, all three of them. And they're all configurable reports.
Great. And on that note, can Alphabet integrate with Eris?
Yes, there's a standard interoperability that we have. It's a standard module that supports the exchange of artifacts between the two products. You can also link between the two interfaces, that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, do I have to use Alphabet for discussion on an idea, or can I use our standard collaboration platform?
Okay, yeah, the way I showed it here was with our internal discussion thread, but we also have integration to collaboration platforms such as MS Teams, and you can then use that to show views and diagrams and things like that. In MS Teams, you can have discussion which is being contributed to either from the MS Teams interface or from the Alphabet interface, and it all comes into the same discussion. So that sort of collaboration with external platforms, yeah, we support it.
Great. Question about Kanban. Do you support Kanban for ideas?
Yeah, good question. Yes, we do actually. We have, again, it's one of these reports that we have that you can configure and has an assistant. And we provide Kanban sample reports for ideas, for demands, for features, and also for other artifacts. It's a report that you can actually focus around any type of artifact, and you can use it to change the status or to change a relationship to another object. They're quite powerful and actually quite useful tools. I quite like using them a lot for different purposes.
Great, and we've got one final question. Is the business capability map following a specific methodology or a standard, for example, TOGAF, BizBoc, and is it compatible with Eris and or Archmate?
The capabilities, we have them, yeah, they're compatible. We actually have, as part of the standard interoperability, also the exchange of capabilities. The methodology is something that I think is the same in most frameworks. for how you create capability maps. I don't think that's an issue, and it's TOGAF is one of the ones that we support, as is Archimate. Yeah, I think the answer to those questions is yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so with that, we've completed our Q&A portion of the session. We'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you, David, for presenting, and thank you so much to the organizers for making the session happen today. We so appreciate it. And thank you to the audience for joining us in today's session. Again, the recording will be made available. We'll also follow up with you, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any other questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you from my side.